But we start with the big story, and it is a history-making story authored by the Michigan men's lacrosse team over the weekend. Began the Big Ten tournament as the number 4 seed, knocked off Ohio State, dispatched top overall seed Penn State, and then beat Maryland for the second time this season and did so in dominant fashion, 14-5. Wolverines' first ever Big Ten tournament title, and with it, the first ever trip to the NCAA tournament. Here are all the firsts pulled off by Michigan this year. In addition to what I just mentioned, the Wolverines, the first 4 seed to ever win the Big Ten tournament after enjoying their first season with more than 8 wins. And in that tournament championship game, Michigan, the first team ever to hold its opposition under 6 goals in that title game. And the head coach of the Wolverines, Kevin Coney, is kind enough to join us from Ann Arbor. Kevin, first and foremost, congratulations. I imagine the exuberance and the excitement lasted for quite a while after that championship on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, it did. I think we're still feeling it. We're still feeling the opportunity, not just to enjoy the championship, but to understand that we actually get more time to be together. And I think that's the most important piece. This is a special roster. It's a group of guys that have sacrificed and put in so much, who have gone through a lot. We have a heavy veteran presence right now, but a lot of these seniors and graduate students who were on the roster for the last couple of years weren't having successes. So to see the smiles on their face after Saturday's big win, and then when our names get called in the selection show yesterday, it was a pretty powerful moment, and it still means an awful lot to these kids. But for me, it's more about just the opportunity to keep going with these guys. You know, it's another day.
And you do get to keep going because of this unbelievable run. Over the course of 2 weeks, dating back to the end of the regular season, you beat your rivals from Columbus twice. I mentioned the win over the top seed, Penn State, in the semifinals. Then you beat Maryland. Hadn't beaten Maryland in Big Ten play until this year. Then you beat them twice, once in the regular season, once in the tournament. What kind of allowed you guys to make this amazing run that got you to this point?
I think it's the leadership of our seniors and our graduate students. That's really what it is. When you have a group of guys who are committed to each other, that's really what it came down to. About middle of the year, they really started to get that confidence and feed off the energy of each other. It's nothing that we're doing X's and O's. It's nothing that we're doing different in terms of how we play the game. Our guys have always played significantly hard. It's always been about that confidence, that leader, that linchpin group that can lead the way, and we're seeing that out of our guys like Nick Rowlett, Andrew Darby, Bryce Clay.
I know you said nothing really changed other than that belief, because that was always there, and the confidence that came along with it. And I know it's not about always X's and O's, but whatever strategy and execution was employed to be able to limit a Maryland team that is so well-rounded and can beat you in so many different areas to just 5 goals in that game. How impressed were you with not just the defensive effort, but also the outstanding play of your all-tournament team goaltender, Hunter Taylor, who did not look like a freshman with those 14 saves?
No, he didn't. Yeah, Hunter's got a cool attitude. He's just kind of he doesn't say much. He's kind of a laid-back guy. But he did kind of give our guys a lot of confidence, and it's a big credit to guys like Andrew Darby, who I thought played an incredible game. And then Coach Jim Rogowski, who really has been working with that group from day one to create the mentality. We rely so heavily on our short stick defensive midfielder play. We call them our bricklayers. They do all the heavy lifting, and I think when they were out there, winning some matchups, but more importantly, communicating and directing some traffic off ball, we were having a lot of success, and makes Hunter's job a lot easier.
Now, Coach, I don't know Coach Rogowski, but my guess is, was he the guy who everyone was trying to convince to receive and raise the trophy and seemed remarkably reticent about doing so at the end of the win?
No, actually, that was our director of operations, Joe Hennessy.
Okay.
Joe Hennessy has been basically one of the founding members of this program. He's a graduate from the University of Michigan in 2003. He's been working in the athletic department for years and years, and he started as the director of operations and communications while we were still a club team. He has seen 2 head coaches be through this program. He has been the staple. He is the heart and soul of Michigan lacrosse, and he's an incredible human being, and nobody loves Michigan or Michigan lacrosse more than Joe Hennessy.
Yeah, that was a really cool moment there. As he eventually agreed, he relented and took the trophy and helped raise it to the sky for your team. On the offensive end, listen, as good as the defense is, you have to score goals. And Michael Boehm was just amazing. Scored a couple from the exact same spot. His shot has that combination of pace and accuracy that you just don't see a lot. How do you describe the performance of Michael, not just in this game, but throughout the tournament as he was named the tournament's most valuable player?
I think it's a real credit to Mike's work ethic. Earlier on in the year, while we played Penn State here at home, Mike went 0 for 8 shooting. That was an evening game on Sunday night. After the game, we met. We were all disappointed. We kind of let one get away from us, we felt. Michael was out on the turf till about midnight shooting extra. The next game, he scored 8 goals. It's just his confidence has never wavered. It's his work ethic, his belief, and you got to give him a lot of credit to kind of rally that way. And I'm really proud of Mike. I love to see his hard work starting to pay off.
Obviously, he got some help in that game from Josh Sawada, who has always been so dangerous. And it seemed like Josh's role may have changed a little bit this year, became really a facilitator in a lot of different ways. He made so many good passes. What is his role and what was it really this year in terms of providing offensive efficiency in addition to power and scoring?
Yeah, Josh is a unique player. He's a chameleon. He can do whatever we need him to do, and that's really what his role is. He kind of garners the premier matchup whenever we see a quality opponent. So he knows he's going to be tested in his one-on-one. So he can adapt and facilitate. When you garner that much attention, regardless of your matchup, some guys are going to fly open. And then Bryce Clay has been reaping the benefit of Josh Sawada's attention. His ability to cut, move, and organize people off ball has been really beneficial for us. And you're going to see him, and his stats have increased since Josh has really kind of embraced this chameleon role.
I loved listening, Coach, to Michael Boehm's post-game interview with our crew who called, and he talked about believe or leave being one of the mottos that this team was all in for. How did they do that? You mentioned the struggles of a year ago. The Big Ten wins just weren't there. And then some 12 months later, you guys are the champions of one of the best lacrosse conferences in the country.
Yeah, I think that's a mantra that Coach Scott Bita brought in with him during his time. Scott has brought a tremendous brand of leadership, not only with his X's and O's and his player development and relationship building. So our big focus has never been on W's and L's. Our big purpose here at the University of Michigan has always been to kind of grow relationships, maximize our opportunities, enjoy competing, and represent the Block M in everything that we do. And those guys really embrace that. And, obviously when you go 0-8 down the stretch a year ago and don't win a big game, you're going to have a chip on your shoulder. And these guys came in here with that chip and really embraced it. And they believed every second. And, it's like every team here. We have a saying here at the University of Michigan, those who stay will be champions. And our guys have really embraced it.
Well, and those who did stay became champions on Saturday. And with that, the auto bid. So what was it like to watch the selection show and know that it wasn't a matter of if, just a matter of when your name would be called?
Yeah, I think, when my experiences in the past has always been, who do we get? Where do we go? What do we think? And now it was always been about doesn't matter who we play. We get a chance to do it together. So once our bid was announced, it was announced early in the selection show. So it was all about, wow, this has happened, right? We're here. Let's start preparing and getting ready for a really talented Cornell team. That's really been our model and how our guys have approached it. Again, we had this mission to win the Big Ten and make the NCAA tournament. We've achieved that goal. We are not content with where we are. We're excited just with the opportunity to compete on the national stage, and we're gonna go put our best foot forward in the tournament.
So it will be Cornell first. And Kevin, I want to finish here because you're one of 4 Big Ten teams from this league to make the tournament. There's only 17 teams in the field. So we're talking about basically a quarter of the field. That's just the second time ever the league has gotten 4 teams into the NCAAs. What does that kind of say, not just about the talent of this league, but over the last few years, the depth that has grown inside the Big Ten?
Yeah, I think if you look at the Big Ten, the amount of 1 or 2 goal games that are throughout the conference, the talent level, the coaching, the commitment from all the universities. This is the best lacrosse conference in the country. I think you can see it from top to bottom. I think any team, whoever gets hot, starting with Big Ten tournament play, can win the conference tournament. And you saw that with us. We were the 4 seed going into it, and we just got hot at the right time. But all of these teams, as we entered into the national stage, have an opportunity to make the Final Four and win a national championship. And that's why we get up every day. It's awesome to compete. It adds a lot of gray hairs to the coaching staff, but at the end of the day, it's so much fun for our kids to have these experiences that every Saturday is a marquee matchup.
Yeah, you keep playing towards Memorial Day weekend. My guess is you don't care how gray the locks get at that point.
Not at all. Not at all.
It is Michigan and Cornell. That'll be Sunday. Big Red against the Maize and Blue to start off Kevin Conry and the Wolverines NCAA tournament. Coach, congratulations again. We truly appreciate the time, and best of luck during this first ever run into the NCAA bracket.
Thank you very much for having me.
It is a scene we have seen before. Never gets old for those in purple. Another Big Ten Women's Lacrosse Tournament Championship for Northwestern as the Wildcats knock off Maryland 14-9. That is 17 straight wins this year for Northwestern. The #1 overall national seed in the NCAA tournament, which starts this week. Of course, the Wildcats once again claiming the Big Ten's auto bid to that tournament. Big Ten well represented in this year's field. Northwestern will wait until they find out the winner between Michigan and Central Michigan. That game is set for this coming weekend. And with that in mind, it is time for today's big interview. The coach of the Wildcats, Kelly Amonte-Hiller, kind enough to join us. Kelly, first and foremost, we appreciate you being here, and congratulations on another chip.
Absolutely. Could not be more excited and grateful for the opportunity.
All right, Kelly, every championship team is different. Everyone is special for a different reason. What makes this team unique?
I think the team cohesion. This group is very close, and they really care for each other. I think every player, from the top goal scorer to the player on the bench, really cares about their role on this team, and it's a total unit.
And that unit had won 16 straight heading into that championship game against Maryland, including a win over the Terps. So when you're the favorite like that, and I know you've been in this position a lot of times, how much do you try to alleviate any of that extra pressure, or do you want the team to kind of embrace that role of being the squad that is expected to win?
We talk about it. It's really us versus us. I think that, we want to have fun, really enjoy the experience. We know this is a special group, so we're trying to, just savor every moment that we have together and celebrate every moment, not just, celebrate the win. We're focusing in on the process and enjoying that whole time.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to say this for later in the interview when I focused on your goalkeeper, Molly LaLiberty. But after the win, she talked about having fun and playing with joy. And you also talked about the importance of that. And I think in today's world, with the athletes more and more familiar with the criticism that's out there and the social media, they sometimes feel this extra pressure. How much as a coach are you trying to remind them that what they're doing is supposed to be fun? Joy is what got us into this in the first place. And coincidentally, when you play with joy, by the way, it's usually when you play your best.
Absolutely. I think it's the key. And we've really keyed in on that. I mean, I think especially at a school like Northwestern, where, there's a lot of work that goes in, not just in the classroom, but on the field. And I think, we're proud of the work that we're putting in, and we want to enjoy that. And, what better time than the playoff time to really savor every single moment.
I know you say this is such a cohesive team and a true team in the meaning of that word, but there are some superstars. And when you start to look at the stats of Izzy Skane and Aaron Kuykendall, they're actually mind-blowing. They've combined for 199 points, and that's this year alone. That's a really good career for two really good players through a 4-year span, not a 1-year span. Let's start with Izzy. What makes her basically unstoppable when she's on the offensive end with the ball in her stick?
Well, I think she has incredible body control. She used to be a gymnast, high level gymnast, and she really can just move and turn on a dime. And she's very powerful athlete. So I think that in itself helps. But I think also just her demeanor. I think she's a really team kid. I think she cares a lot about the group and what's happening, and she just really vibes off of everyone. And I think for her and Erin, they're great friends, they're a dynamic duo, and they really feed off of each other. Erin's strengths really play off of Izzy's, and vice versa. And you add in there Haley Radigan, who had more points last year than the Tewaaraton winner. And then we have the Big Ten Freshman of the Year, and also Dylan Amonte and Elle Hansen. We really have a dynamic group. So it's tough to stop one person when you have so many weapons.
Yeah, Erin is as tough as she is talented. Kelly, she held on to the ball in some tight front of the cage situations in that game on Saturday. I have no idea how it stayed inside her stick. Is there a way to kind of quantify her value to this program? Not just what she does stats-wise, but in terms of everything that she does.
Yeah, I think just the type of person she is. She's a really caring, empathetic person, and she's a great leader of our team. And she's really kind of come into that role this year tremendously. So it's been really fun to watch her maturity. She loves the game of lacrosse. She loves sports in general, and it's so fun to have someone like that is so creative, studies the game, and makes everyone around her better.
Kelly, I've talked to a lot of coaches, Fran McCaffrey most recently at Iowa, who coaches their own kids, but it's a little bit different when you're coaching a niece or a nephew, and you coach your brother Tony's daughter Dylan, who you already mentioned. Now, I imagine in your house growing up, there was a little bit of competitiveness, knowing how good you and Tony were as athletes. Some 30 years later, what's it like to coach your brother's daughter?
Well, I mean, I think there's obviously challenges to that, but I think it's really an awesome thing to kind of see her begin to mature and just really come into her own as a person, as an athlete. And so that part of it is just really fun. That's what I enjoy about coaching, no matter who it is. But I mean, I think, it's really special to just see her grow and mature and really find her confidence level.
Yeah, she had an awesome game on Saturday night as well. I heard her name a lot on the call. She was kind of all over the place. And you guys did so many great things, but not just offensively. When you look at what you did defensively against a really explosive Maryland offense, what was the key on that side of the field? Yeah,
I think Maryland, they have been really coming on here as of late, and they fought really hard in that game, and I was really proud of our D. We stayed steady. I think we came out strong, had some nice stops. We're really focused on what we needed to do game plan wise to be successful. And then as the game wore on, we gained more and more confidence. And I think we're able to make the stops, make the saves down the stretch when they most counted.
I know you've been here before. I know you've seen your name pop up when the selection show rolls around as the #1 overall national seed. But as we discussed, that never gets old. So what was the feeling this year for this team, obviously with some lofty goals, to see Northwestern and that #1 overall national seed heading into the tournament?
I mean, honestly, our team was buzzing before the announcement was even made. They came in and they, just had great energy and excitement for the tournament. This is something that they've been waiting for since last year's game against UNC. I think there was a lot of hard feelings there. So they're just excited at another opportunity. We really enjoyed the regular season. We enjoyed the Big Ten tournament, and now it's time to move on to the NCAA. So I just think they're really grateful for this opportunity going forward.
All right, so let's finish with that opportunity. Your tournament will start this weekend on Mother's Day, Sunday, against either Michigan or Central Michigan. What, if anything, changes, Kelly, in the way that you prepare or the message that you try to send to the players when they know you are in a win or go home kind of situation?
I just think, we need to continue to have the mentality that we've had all along, that us versus us mentality, and, get better each day this week. We have the opportunity to have a bye on Friday, so that's huge. Gives our bodies extra time to recover, prepare for what's ahead in two great Midwestern teams. So we're excited to watch them on Friday night and then see who we will face.
Kelly Amonte-Hiller, head coach of the Northwestern Wildcats, reigning Big Ten tournament champs and #1 overall seed in the 2023 NCAA tournament. Kelly, as always, great to catch up. Best of luck to you and the Cats.
Thanks so much. Go Cats.
An amazing season for Northwestern women's lacrosse was an amazing season for the Northwestern men's basketball team last year. And guess what? Boo Buie says, as good as it was, he's not finished. The point guard who took a huge step last year will be back this coming season for Chris Collins and the Cats. We are back on Big Ten today. Now, if you've never seen the hammer throw, I recommend you pull it up, whether you do it online, whether you have some video access, because it's unbelievable field sport. We're about to talk with Kostas Zaltos, who is the best in the country at the university level of doing this. He has thrown the hammer more than 75 meters. Here in the U.S., we like feet. So about 250 feet. Again, this unbelievable combination of speed, strength, and coordination. And we are thrilled to be joined by the Minnesota field athlete from Minneapolis. Kostas, first and foremost, we appreciate the time and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So let's get started here, because I understand growing up in Greece, it was not the hammer or any type of track and field sport that had your first love. It was basketball. So how did you transition from basketball to becoming a hammer thrower?
It was my high school coach. He was really passionate with track and field, and he just saw me one day playing basketball, and he was like, "You should throw hammer." And I was like, "I don't want to throw hammer. I want to play basketball." As a little kid, and I literally just tried once to play throw hammer, and it was amazing. When I got my first win, I was really excited and happy for that, and I was like, "I'm gonna keep doing it," and here I am right now.
Now, my understanding is that coach actually built all the equipment that you needed and put together everything that you needed to build your ability to be a hammer thrower by himself. How did that whole training ground work out with your coach?
My coach has 40 years of experience back home. He's one of the best coach throws in the whole Greece. He has a great history, a lot of national records with other athletes and my teammates, old teammates, and he's responsible for our whole facilities. Basically, I'm telling you every time, he's my coach, he's my physical trainer, he's my taxi driver when my family cannot drive me to practice or drive me home. He's doing everything for us, and I'm just really appreciative that I have him in my life, and he did that just for me.
Kostas, how long did it take you before you realized this wasn't just something that you liked, but something that you could be pretty darn good at?
I don't know, honestly. I'm just trying to work every day and just do what I'm good at it. And I don't even know if I'm good, to be honest. I'm just working on that every day and just trying to be great one day.
Trust me, I think everybody you compete against would tell you that you're pretty good since you're throwing it further than they are. I want to focus a little bit on how you got from Greece to Minneapolis. Now, Minnesota coach Peter Miller, he was a former thrower himself at the U. I understand you guys actually met in Sweden at the Under-20 European World Championship. So how did that meeting end up eventually leading you from Greece to Minneapolis?
It was a great timing because it was kind of like a recruiting, but having the face-to-face conversation, of course, helped me a lot compared to the other universities I was talking at that point. And I was just really excited to meet him and just do an actual conversation face-to-face and see what he has to tell me. And he was really excited from the first moment. He just shared me all his thoughts about our future together and the future with the program and everything. And I just got in love with the program, with the university, except the weather, of course. But it was a great time.
Well, that's a professional television segue, as we say, because I was going to ask about your transition. I'm lucky enough to have been to Greece, been to the islands, Santorini, this beautiful weather, these beaches. What was that transition like for you to go from Greece, your hometown, by the way, less than 1,000 people, and then make that move to Minneapolis?
It was a culture shock, I would say. Of course, it was something remarkable coming to a big city like Minneapolis, and St. Paul was incredible. Like the first day, I can still remember that being on the airport. My coach came to pick me up. Was middle of the winter, and I was wearing my winter coat, my Greek winter coat, and he was like, "What are you wearing?" I'm like, "My winter coat." He's like, "No, that's not a winter coat. That's a fall coat. You have to buy a new one." And I'm like, "Okay, I will do it." First thing, the next day, I'm just buying a new winter coat because I was freezing because it was so cold. And the transition it was hard at the beginning, but now I'm getting used to it.
And as you start to get used to the U.S. and Minneapolis, you're starting to settle in, and then the pandemic arrives. And obviously, you want to go home, you want to be able to see your family, and you're probably planning to go home for a few weeks' time, maybe a month to see everybody. And it turns out to be obviously much longer than that before you can come back. What was that entire ordeal like as you're kind of waiting to find out exactly what your future is going to hold?
Yeah, it was really hard. Like I remember talking to my coach back home and with my coach here in Minnesota, trying to figure out what was the plan. And the plan was leave for a couple weeks because we didn't know how long the lockdown and the pandemic will keep. And we're like, just go home and come back next semester. Unfortunately, that happened for 10 months, almost a year. I was doing online classes for like 1.5 semester. It wasn't that great. I was really close to just stop everything and just do something else. I didn't want to come back to the US at one point because of lockdown, because of everything. Sitting inside wasn't great for me. I couldn't practice home because we had a really tough lockdown, and pandemic was really tough too because I lost my grandfather during pandemic, and that changed a little bit my mindset of thinking and changed my whole idea and perspective of how's life and what do I have to do and why I chose to study abroad and why I chose to be in Minnesota. And I just promised to him one day I will be great like him because my grandfather was great, and I'm just trying to be like him.
And I know you say he is the greatest man that you'd ever met in your life, and you have him memorialized in that tattoo on your left arm.
I have one on my shoulder, yeah.
Yeah. What did he mean to you, and what does he mean to you as you compete day by day with his memory obviously never going away?
My grandfather meant a lot of me. He was my best friend. I grew up with him. I had the chance to spend 20 years of my life with him. And pandemic, of course, wasn't great because I lost him during pandemic, as I said earlier. But when I'm competing, I feel like he's next to me from up there watching me and supporting me. And I can feel this feeling all the time. And I'm really happy that I have so many memories with him, and I will just remember him till I will lose my breath.
As you throw that hammer, and we showed that record-setting 75-plus meter, 250-foot throw, I mentioned the combination of the speed and the coordination as you spin and the release that has to be at just the perfect time. What does make the ideal hammer throw, and do you know when you release it just how good it is?
My coach tells me all the time that when you're just having a perfect throw, you don't remember it. And it's kind of like that kind of like happened in Drake's like 2 weeks ago when I PR with the 75-27, 250 feet throw. I wasn't actually feeling that throw. I was just trying to execute as I'm doing in practice and I'm trying to do in competition, as my coach tells me all the time. And it just happened, and I'm really excited because struggling after pandemic and trying to be in a good shape again, it was a big factor for all of us. And I'm just excited for the season so far, and I'm just going to keep dreaming and keep building till the end.
Now, I watched and I tried to listen closely to a couple of your throws. Are you saying opa at the end,
Yeah.
one of those Greek terms of excitement? Is that what I heard?
Yes, you're right. Opa. It's more like an excitement word. When I just want to relieve my feelings and my emotions and all the power that I have at that moment, I'm just saying the word just to help me a little bit.
Well, I would say that it has helped you more than just a little bit. The best hammer thrower in the country at the college level, Kostas Zaltos of the University of Minnesota, kind enough to spend some time with us, explain the hammer throw, give us his backstory, which is really an amazing story. Kostas, we truly appreciate the time. Wish you the best of luck, obviously, at the college and international level and in everything that you do moving forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
Yes, the Big Ten softball tournament bracket is all set. 12 teams making their way to Champaign for this weekend's tournament, and all 11 games will be televised right here live on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. Unlike the double elimination baseball tournament, in softball, you lose one and you are going home. So all the marbles are up for grabs this week. Of course, Northwestern is the number 1 overall seed. What a season had by Indiana. The Hoosiers are the number 2 seed. Speaking of baseball, up to the minute Big Ten standings, Maryland took 2 out of 3 from Nebraska this weekend. It was good enough to hold on to the lead, but Indiana got a game closer after the Hoosiers swept Northwestern. Rutgers continues its mid to late season run. Scarlet Knights pull off a sweep. They now have reached the 30-win mark as well. Iowa is at 10-7 at this point in the season. And for more on it, we bring in Michael Huff, everything Big Ten baseball related, not just this past weekend, which we'll get to in a minute. Right now, though, Mike, with 2 weeks left, where do you think we stand? Kind of the big overarching picture in the Big Ten is all these teams jockeying to be among the top 8 for the tournament.
Well, it's getting really exciting. And what we're seeing, in my mind's eye, are the teams that are starting to separate themselves. And we saw it up at the top. Maryland, Indiana, Iowa, Rutgers. These were teams that preseason all the coaches felt were probably a part of that top group, and they're now showing it. What's really exciting with 2 weekends left, I look at those 6 teams that have to vie for 4 spots that are still in contention from Minnesota all the way up through Nebraska.
All right, we'll get to those teams in just a little bit. Actually, we'll get to Nebraska right now because they faced off against the team this past weekend that is at the top of the standings, and that's Maryland. Now, the Terps took 2 out of 3. That's pretty good news. The bats were still there, but the Huskers bats were also part of this weekend, and they were able to take the midweek game.
Well, and you think about this was, in my mind's eye, the premier matchup. You had 2 clubs that had tremendous bat power. You've got the Andersons, the Matthews from Nebraska. You've got the Shaw, the LaRossos from Maryland. These 4 top 5 in home runs. So you knew this was going to be a big power matchup, kind of like last weekend for Maryland. And the question was, could Maryland keep going? And they did. Now, Nebraska did what it had to do. They had to make sure they got at least one, keeping themselves in that good position for the Big Ten tournament and seeing if they can have some momentum. Again, thinking about beating that nationally ranked Maryland club. But Maryland kind of is also feeling pretty good, and they're starting to find their stride, bats and pitching-wise.
Yeah, and I think pretty comfortably right now, barring a major collapse late in the season, pretty comfortably inside the NCAA tournament field, either as the auto bid or as the at-large. I think Indiana says the exact same thing, and this was a somewhat dangerous weekend for the Hoosiers because when you're taking on a struggling Northwestern team, it's not going to do you any good in the RPI.
Nope.
And if you were to lose one and Indiana came awfully close in the second game of this series, it can be costly.
Very true. And you think about the fact that Indiana just got swept at home. They were 22-1 at home and got swept by a great Maryland club. Now you have to go to Northwestern, where you have to believe you're going to take 3. But this is still Big Ten. Like, Northwestern still has some arms, still has some bats. You still have to play really well. And what we saw from Indiana, where the pitchers struggled so mightily last weekend, they really kind of stepped up. In that second game, like you talked about, Rick, had to go to extra innings. But Indiana pitchers did a great job of keeping the Northwestern bats at bay, waiting for that big hat, which eventually came. And then on Sunday, they just kind of had the bats that we've seen all year.
Speaking of sweeps, we go to Champaign. Really good weekend for the Illini and a really devastating weekend in a lot of different ways for Michigan State.
Very true. I mean, Michigan State, we were loving the fact that this story had so many positive things about them. From the top of their lineup to Brock Vredenberg leading the Big Ten and hitting. And here was a ball club that going into the weekend was 26-13. So you had to, 28-13. So you had to feel like Michigan State was that club playing Illinois, playing Iowa, playing Rutgers, going down the stretch that had a really good chance of waking up a lot of people outside the Big Ten to say we deserve a potential at-large bid even if we don't win the Big Ten. For Illinois, this has been such a disappointing season. One of those top 6 teams that just has never really found their footing all year. They were sitting in the 10th spot out of the 8 teams to get in the Big Ten. So they're looking on the outside in, and their season's over. If they only win 1, if they lose 2, if they get swept, season's over. What do? They take all 3 to now all of a sudden they're still in the 9th spot. But they've put themselves over 500 in Big Ten Conference to giving themselves that chance to play in the tournament.
A couple weekends ago, Michigan State's RPI was hovering in the high 50s, right around 60. Now it's all the way down to 80. So now you're looking at the auto bid or nothing when it comes to the NCAA tournament. Rutgers has been a team that's really turned it on as of late. They've really done so with the bats. They sweep Penn State. Chris Brito joining Todd Frazier, among the all-time great offensive players, home run hitters for the Scarlet Knights. And I think, Michael, right now, outside of Indiana and Maryland, I'm not sure there's a more dangerous team in this league than Rutgers.
Well, I agree, because it's not just the bats. They've had the arms now step up. So they're playing solid defense. They're having the bats come through, and their pitchers are now stepping up to doing what we thought we were going to see all year. There are 2 or 3 top arms getting into the 6th, 7th inning, sometimes going 8, giving their bullpen a chance to shorten it up and use those power arms that Steve Owens has and really use them effectively. The bats, which we've seen up and down this year, we've seen a couple really tough weekends where Rutgers got swept, and all of those 6 games they lost by 1 or 2 runs. And you think about a ball bounces, a wind blows, something happens, a guy just misses it instead of hitting a home run against you, it's a deep fly ball. If you take those 6 losses and turn them into 6 wins, this is a club that might be in the 20s in the RPIs and sitting probably really comfortably.
Yeah, I also think with those bats, and you're going to face some pitching staffs that get tired by the time you get to Omaha, Rutgers can swing it. And right now, there's not a lot of pitching staffs that want to see Chris Brito and the rest of that lineup. Ohio State and Iowa, it was an historic weekend for Rick Heller. Picked up career win number 1,000.
Very exciting. Congratulations
to Coach Heller. Iowa's hovering right around the 40s in the RPI because they're unable to complete the sweep. Ohio State does steal 1 game in this series. What's our status right now, and how do we feel about the Hawkeyes?
Well, Hawkeyes, to me right now, feel a little bit like Rutgers last year. You feel really good that this is a club that, on a national scale, has proven themselves. They've taken on some of the best teams, ironically the top team, and beat them. The problem is that they've had some losses like we had on Sunday where they lost to Ohio State. And you kind of think, wait a minute, this is a club that should be doing better. And this is another Rick Heller club that's going to get 40 wins. I have no doubts again. And Rick just seems to pile up wins. We just saw him getting his thousands on his career. But you feel like there's more in the tank. There's more that this team can do. We've seen the bats get live, but they have these great arms that somehow have struggled a little bit. And the question is, can they find their rhythm and be consistent the way that now Rutgers starters are, getting 6, 7 innings, not just 3, 4, or 5?
Final thoughts on the final series of the weekend. It was Michigan and Minnesota. Minnesota takes 2 out of 3 from Michigan over the weekend. It's just a Wolverine team that hasn't quite been able to find the consistent stride that we thought it would find.
Well, there's so many things you can attribute that to. When you think about Tracy Smith coming back, you've got some freshmen that are coming in that probably have a different mindset because they're Tracy Smith's guys, not Eric Bakich guys. So now all of a sudden you think about, how do we mesh these types of personalities? We have some great talent here, which we've seen. Kyler O'Halloran, the best lefty pitcher in the Big Ten, but just not, again, 2 or 3 good games, 1 or 2 bad games, not quite been able to find that stride that I think we're going to see from this Michigan club, Tracy Smith's club, probably 2 or 3 years from now. But again, this is the Big Ten. Just like Northwestern put a big scare into Indiana on Saturday and Sunday, scoring a bunch of runs, Minnesota still has some players that can hit the ball and that can throw it. And they took 2 out of 3 at home.
And now 7-11, 2 weekends left. You never know where John Anderson's team is going to position itself in that run to try to get into the field for the Big Ten tournament in Omaha.